welcome to ADI Ahmedabad, Têtê-À-Têtê. This is the second in the series that we've started since last month, and our guest today is Akshay Gupta. If you've read about him, we've been sending out all these messages that he's a car racer and a lot of other things as well. Very, very young. And that's nice because a lot of new young people need to introduce themselves to the bigger world and let them know what innovation is taking place in the country. So Akshay, most of us, if we've had parents who owned cars, have started our relationship with a car as babies because our parents would drive us around, to put us to sleep. That's the typical way our relationship with cars start. How did yours start?
It's kind of similar but not similar. So I'll speak about. And first of all, thank you for having me. I think I was 2 when I wouldn't stop crying until and unless I was put in the car every morning and the driver drove me around. So I would wake up with the sound of the engine every morning, and I won't stop crying until I was placed in the car and I was given a joyride in the car. And I think even before that, I was just playing with toy cars. And when I was 4 years old, my dad saw the love for car, right? One day he went to, so we were in a small town in Rajasthan. He went to some work trip and he got back a go-kart for me. Okay. Oh, wow. And that was it. That is all I did all my day. I just drove that go-kart around on the hills of Rajasthan. So our house was almost on a hill. And just driving it around downhill at a high speed is all I did all day. That's how my love for car began. I just was in love with cars ever since I can remember.
So because you're mentioning this reminds me of my own childhood. I've always owned a red car. And in my childhood, I had one of those pedal cars. It's also red. Now think of it. So it's very
likewise. My car was red.
Yeah.
Is that where the inspiration for the ADI logo comes from?
Yeah, probably. So you started racing at a very young age. And what kind of training did you do to become a car racer?
Quite honestly, nothing. Like if you ask me if I went through professional training, no. But because I was fortunate that there was a karting track at that time in Ahmedabad, right? It was at red carpet. So all I used to do is just go down there every weekend and drive. That's all the training I ever had, like misdirected training where I was just driving and figuring out how to get faster around the racetrack every single lap, right? And when I got older, I think when Toyota selected me, they had Japanese racers who had come down. And they were training us. And this was not just, your driving training, but it was physical training, mental training as well. And even media training, how to represent yourself in the media and all that.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What kind of...
it was quite fun. So we were meant to go around and finish a course around the track in terms of running or doing some physical activity to assess our fitness levels, right? And then we were handed out a detailed plan as to how we can improve our fitness levels to get faster in the car. Now, people don't realize this, how much it takes to, physically be fit to be able to drive a race car. But just to give you some context, Formula 1 drivers, and I'm no Formula 1 driver, but Formula 1 drivers lose about 3 kgs of water weight when they go into a race. So when they come out of the race, they lose 3 kgs in water weight alone. So imagine how much running you have to do to lose that sort of water weight. So it's insane amount of cardio, if you may, right? Because your heart rate is high. You're doing physical activity. You have to put 80 kgs of force on the pedal to be able to brake the car. You have to sustain G forces of 5-6 G even in a Formula 1 car. In our cars, it was relatively low. I think the Etios didn't do a lot to race. The Formula cars that we used to race. Yeah, so the faster cars are the Formula cars, and those cars would pull about 2.5 Gs at max, right? And that was also a lot physically. So it was training physically, so you have to train a lot physically, train your core muscles, train in terms of doing a lot of cardio, and train in terms of mentally being stronger. I think for most of the sports, the mental aspect is neglected, and that is the biggest aspect, if you ask me, right? If you have another driver who you're trying to overtake mentally, even before you're trying to overtake them, you'll have them when you try to overtake them. So that is a much bigger aspect of racing, which is neglected by most people. I think mental strength is of too much importance over there. Yeah.
So do they also train you for failure in that sense?
Not really. No one taught us like that. No one trained us like that, to be honest. Not for failure. Mental strength as a whole, it was just a perspective of, in terms of Toyota, the training was just a perspective of how you can recognize your strengths and then just focus on them, rather than, understanding how to capture the competent mind as a whole to take advantage of that. That was not that. But yeah, a lot of the training was in terms of your rigor. How do you build that? How do you build that attitude?
And what kind of commitment do you have to have for, a sport like this?
Everything. Like you have to, that's all you do all your life, right? Because it takes your fitness levels to be at the peak. And most of the time, people like me, at least, who don't come from money, we have to find money. So we have to find sponsors. So the business of the sport was more attractive at some times for me, because 90% of my time was spent in trying to, find sponsors to be able to continue racing. So I would go on meetings, and I think I have a record of how many meetings I went to in the peak year. It was 2014. I was also doing a job as a journalist, and for a car magazine only. And simultaneously, I think I went to some 60 odd meetings over a period of 3 to 4 months to be able to bag sponsorship. And this is after like thousands of mails and cold calls, right? That you bag 50 odd meetings, and then you will be able to translate one or two of them into your sponsors that you can race with. So the entire business aspect of it is also neglected. It's a massive thing because you need a lot of money to race, because these cars are prototype cars and they need special tires, special fuel, special parts, which are made in very low quantity. So it's the most expensive sport in the world. And 90% of the time is spent like this, and then training mentally, physically, and on the simulator.
So you kind of give up on all the other fun things that kids your age.
Yeah. I think 9 years I didn't take a vacation.
Wow.
Because I was just focused on this. So
Where did you go for your first vacation after that?
It was last year. It was 2019. The first place I went was in the woods, the national park, Velavada National Park. And this was a gift from my friends, who sent me there. And I went alone. I just took books and just read for 3-4 days. I call it a reading vacation. I decided I'll do it every year now.
Nice. So what did you do as a journalist? How did you get into that line? Writing for an auto magazine at what age of 14, 15, as you said?
No, 19. This was 19. So I got into writing for a magazine because it became a kind of a hobby to write about motorsport in general. So I was writing about motorsport for several blogs, right? And I recognized that, okay, that could be a very good means to promote my own career in racing. So since I can't get 2-page articles into a magazine to speak about me, how about I go into that magazine and write about myself, right? My story of racing. And that will get me more sponsors. So that was my plain idea of, okay, this was the naive idea of getting into journalism. But it worked out quite well. And I took inspiration from this ex-Formula One driver called Tiff Needell. So this guy was a journalist and is a journalist to this day. He's a presenter for a TV show, okay, an automotive show.
Okay.
And simultaneously, he had a Formula One career. So he grew up the ranks with the assistance of his journalism career a lot. And I thought, okay, I can do the same thing. So I applied for the first job, and this was my first application for the job, for any job, and I got it. So it started off as an internship, and it got really, really interesting, right? Because all you have to do is test cars, write about them, go to motorsport events, and just enjoy the event, write about them as well. It was quite a fun thing to do.
How did your parents take to all of this? Because a lot of the students here nowadays have issues, mostly the parents take the decision about what you will study and where you will go and what your future look like. So this is an odd one for India. It's definitely not one that is doctor, engineer, that kind of thing. It is a new thing. So how did your parents kind of go and do this so young?
So there are two aspects to that. One, I've been very stubborn as a kid. Second, I've had really good parents. So, and I was raised in an unconventional family as such. Like, if you look at the convention, how the society is, in that aspect, it's an unconventional family because my mother was a businesswoman and my father was a bank manager, right? So that is an unconventional thing. My mother was earning more than my father throughout her life, right? And I grew up watching that, so nothing was uncommon for me. I could do anything, right? So my family supported me in that aspect. They were always worried about the safety aspect of it all, but I downplayed it for them a lot. So I used to say that it's safer to drive a race car than a road car, which I believe to be true to a large extent, right? Because in Indian roads, there are 1.5 lakh people who die every year. And if you're in a car, you're much safer. But if you're on a two-wheeler or a bicycle or a pedestrian, it's the riskiest thing you can do. So it's much safer to drive a race car where there's a controlled environment, if you may. Uh, I kind of underplayed the dangers like that and kind of never took them to the racetrack. So they didn't see how fast we actually go.
Okay. Let's come to your company. You started kee-yo-tee, and
Yeah.
what was your idea to do it? How did you kind of go about starting up? Because that's what everybody wants to know nowadays. How do you start a startup? Where do you get your funding? What is the paperwork? But what was your idea that actually kind of got you the money, etc., to do that?
So there are multiple things to this. So there's no one answer that why I started this company. If I that's the honest answer to that. But let me walk you through some of the thought process. Okay. So one was that I love computers. So I love technology because my mother used to run the computers business. Okay. She used to deal in technology, and I grew up watching that. And I grew up watching her run the business. So I love two aspects of it, which is that technology is something I love. I was coding when I was in sixth standard or seventh standard. I was coding in C, and by the time they started teaching it in school, I knew all of it. So I was showing off there, and that got me attracted to it more. Like I could show off something, right? So, and technology was one aspect, and business was another thing. And as a banya, it comes in my blood. Like I love finance, right? I love finance a lot, and automobile is something I love a lot. So there's something I found which could combine all the three things I love, which is cars, technology, and business. This is one way of thinking, and I love doing. I've always set this thing clear in my head that I'll only do the things that I love doing. I'll not be getting distracted by money or anything to be able to do things that I don't enjoy doing that much. So I've stuck to that for the longest of time. And business is something I love. Finance, I love strategy. Everything I do in this business, I love all of it. It's just too much fun, to be honest. The fourth aspect and the completely side aspect of it was I started this company with a naive perspective of, you know, bringing a change in the road safety environment, the road safety situations in the country. I believe technology is a very good tool combined with some really good business models to create road safety, to create change in the society. And of, I'm still of the firm opinion, and I still to this date run this business with the major goal being that we'll bring road safety change in the country, right? So telematics as a tool is used in the world of race car driving to recognize mistakes that you would make while driving the car. And that goes to the point that you can even pinpoint 1 centimeter of a mistake that you make while driving a car, and that could lead to a penalty that you'll have, okay, in the race. And I thought telematics can be used in the same aspect in the larger perspective of the road cars, and we could bring a change in the environment. And you reward people for driving safer rather than punish people for driving unsafe. And that's a better mechanism for bringing change than punishing people, right? So that was the entire motive of starting this company. Pivoted many times. Uh, from the initial naive idea to a very solid idea that we have right now that we are working on and building, and we are deploying in the market right now. So what we essentially now do is we build the connected car technology stack. So when I speak about connected cars, it deals with vehicle to cloud communication, vehicle to vehicle communication, and vehicle to infrastructure communication. Our focus area is vehicle to cloud communication for now, because vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure will take a long time to come. So we build a vehicle to cloud communication electronics, the firmware or the software on top of the electronics, the cloud, the AI, and then the front end for the consumers to consume their vehicle in a way, right? So we make consumers' life easy. We connect the consumer to all the stakeholders and the consumer's cars to all the stakeholders. So our cars are now connected to your dealership, your garages, your spare manufacturers, insurance company, finance company, and it makes everything much more efficient. And that's what we do. That we build a connected car ecosystem, is what I say.
And how does this, it's a gadget that is fitted into the car?
So it comes in two models. One you can buy on Amazon or our own website on scouter.in.
Okay.
And the other one is, it goes inside the hood of the vehicle, which comes as a fitment that you can, that some manufacturers are providing or some large players are providing in the industry. So we have both the variants. You can plug and play it. It takes 60 seconds to go. And now you have your vehicle's data on your phone, right? You can, in real time, you have all of vehicle's health data, location data. If there's an accident, you'll know. If the vehicle gets towed, you'll know. If it's parked and someone hits it, you'll know. What is the health of the vehicle in terms of the engine, when it'll run out, when do you need the service. It'll keep reminding you of all of that. Makes your life entirely easy to own a car, essentially.
And how would this work? I mean, do you plan to make it some tie up with car companies to ensure that it is kind of built in fitment into newly produced cars? Would you do that?
So a lot of the cars that you'll see right now, most of them have connected cars in some way or the other, right? And by 2025, I think 90% of all cars sold or rolling out of the assembly line will have connected cars. So in some way or the other, right? And gradually it'll just become a normal thing. And you'll have all the cars running on it. Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry, I think there's
a little lag.
Okay, lag. Yeah. I was saying that by 2025, all the cars will come with connected cars in some way or the other. To some extent, even right now they have it. Gradually, we'll get into the OEM market that we call it, and we'll tie up with car manufacturers. For now, we are working with large-scale used car dealers, new car dealers, insurance companies, finance companies, garage aggregators. So we are supplying a technology to all of them.
And how do they receive your idea? What do they say when you come with this idea to them and say, this is what we are doing? And because normally, bank managers, even if you go for a home loan at the age of 40, they look at you like, are you serious? So when you're in your 20s and you go and say, I have this great idea and I'm going to do this, how do they look at you?
A lot of it has changed, at least in the senior management. Like when you speak to them and you understand that they've already dabbled at some level with the technology that you're building and you're supplying to them. They just don't see sometimes, in terms of my particular technology, they don't see the feasibility of it in certain aspects, right? So my job as a business owner is to figure out how it can be feasible on a large scale, and it scales, right? It goes massive. And that's when my business earns, my stakeholders earn, and everyone in the entire ecosystem benefits. So, but these days, if you ask me, there are two funny responses I get when I speak to them on the phone, and then I schedule a meeting, and now the meetings are not there, but when they used to be, when I would walk into a meeting, there'll usually be an expression of, okay, where's Akshay? Right? Because we didn't expect a young 20-ish looking person to come into the room. We were expecting someone much more mature. And then, like, in terms of the appearance and all, right, they expected some 40-year-old to come in. But when you get to talking about the industry, and when you get to discussing the entire industry and the proposition we have and the technology that we serve, it becomes easier after that. You just need to enter a conversation, that's all.
How many designers do you work with? How many of your team, large is your team, and how many of them are design background people?
So we are a really small team, if you ask me. We are 12 people. We're a startup. We've been building this for about 2.5, 3 years. Uh, Out of the 12 people, I think, so 3 are in the design aspect, one leads it, and then there are 2 designers. And because we have a consumer facing app where the consumer has to interact with the vehicle at all times, right? And the services that we provide with the help of a lot of stakeholders. So we have to focus on design a lot, right? We have to make the consumer's life easier in terms of navigating through the app, or being able to buy something on the platform, book a service on the platform, get information. So there's so much data points that we collect out of the vehicle, and to portray that data in a really positive manner, or hassle-free manner, it's quite a task. So these designers' job is particularly that, and I dwell a lot into it. I'm usually indecisive on the design aspect of things, because there's so much I don't know on that side that I procrastinate that side a lot, and hence I leave it to the team to decide what's best for them, right?
And how do you approach designers? I mean, do you write to placement organizations in design schools, or do you just put out an ad, or it goes through your network? Just curious.
So approaching in terms of, okay, hiring designers or getting them on board or working with them, right? I think it's a little bit of all of it, and we'll try everything we can to be able to get the best minds to work with us. And so the more you increase your horizon of people that you can interact with, the easier it'll be for you to narrow down to the people. We try a little bit of everything.
So normally, how many applications do you get?
A lot, like out of 300-ish, we'll select one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you look for people just around in Ahmedabad, or is it a nationwide search, or is it an international search?
It's nationwide. For now, it's nationwide, and most of my team is remote right now. Everyone's working from their own hometowns, all across the country.
Okay.
So in Ahmedabad, we only have 5 people.
Okay.
Yeah, and they also work remotely from their places.
Do you think that the kind of people you hire, that they have the skill sets already on board, or do you think that it needs a lot of discussion and looking more together to be able to find, once you've hired somebody, that you can actually get what you want out of them?
So I would say they don't have the entirety of skills that we would look for. It's just growing as a company and growing as employees together. So a company is nothing but its employees, right? And we're just growing as a company and growing as employees together. Most of, as I mentioned, the average age in the team is about 26 or 25. We're very young people, and everyone's learning on the job and experimenting. So the design process would usually look like, we'll have one render, and then we'll think, okay, if we can, where are all the places we can move this particular button to? Okay, so just to give you a perspective of, let's say, the app UX design that we are looking at, or UI design we are looking at, and we'll sit and brainstorm on that for hours, and then we'll come up with one particular thing that we all enjoy a lot. Like, this is working out. This looks good. Someday later we'll think of something, and then we'll realize, okay, that was a bad idea. We'll go back on the drawing board, redo it, and then come back with it again. So it's all learning on the as a process while building it. That's what everyone's doing, because we're a young team. No one comes with a lot of experience.
And what do your financiers think about that approach?
Their approach is not towards what I do internally in the team as much. It is more as to what the outcome is. So as long as
you need to pay back, right? At some generate income. So there must be pressure for that as well.
Yeah. So that's the goal of any company, right? I believe a company's core goal is to create wealth for everyone.
Yeah.
Not just your employees, but your stakeholders in terms of your investors, but also the vendors that you're interacting with and the nation as a whole, and for yourself, right? So everyone, you're just generating wealth for everyone. And it's not, if you look at game theory, it's not a zero-sum game. Everyone wins at the end of the day, right? So how we look at it is that they give us the freedom when they invest, and I take care of this as to who's investing into the company as well. You have to, it's like a marriage of everything, right? So you have to ensure that the person is well aligned with your ethics, with your thought process, with the vision of the company, and then only they come into the investors pool. While simultaneously, if you look at internally how we operate, it doesn't influence as much until unless we're meeting the goals that we wish to. Right. So if we are not, it'll just be a conversation about, okay, what do you think is going on? Where are we not meeting why are we not meeting these goals, and where is everything or anything going wrong? So it's just a conversation, not as much as to the process of how we do it.
And how much time would you like to kind of, make it? Is all of you must be having some moment that you say, okay, we give this 5 years, and then we have been, in the market at this level, or then we kind of say, okay, we've tried and we've done it, and we have.
So here's a perspective on that, and we are very different on that aspect. So there are a few things. The core team that we have, it's like family. So we all love working together and love doing what we do also. Okay, so that's one. Now, why I'm saying that is because a perspective to this is, as a startup, you keep pivoting until you figure out what works best with the market, and you call that product market fit. Once you attain product market fit, everything goes like a rocket ship from there on. That's how startups function, right? Our perspective is that we'll keep pivoting. Something works out or not, because we all love doing what we do. There's no deadline we keep to this. We'll do it as long as it takes, right? We just love doing this. We love building things. We enjoy each other's company and while building them. So the core team is married to not just the idea, but the company. And our vision is to just build whatever we love building, and building wealth for the nation, or building wealth for everyone, every stakeholder. That's what we do.
How did you come about this name? Why did you select this name, which of course 90% of India cannot,
Yeah, so it's a company name, so it doesn't come up that much. The brand names are different. The brand names, we have two brand names. One is a customer-centric brand name, which is called Scouto, and then there's a B2B brand name, which is called Wheel Intel, right? So these are two brand names that we have. The company name, I'm really bad at naming things. It took me a long time, but my idea was that we are delusional in a way that we're trying to accomplish something which is really tough. If you look at the road safety situations in India, it's a very delusional thing to think that, okay, a bunch of 10 or 15 or 20 idealistic people can sit together, work on something, build something, and change that. So we're delusional with that, and that so was Don Quixote, right? And this stuck to me ever since I read it in school. During the school days, we had it in the course, the English literature course, right? And ever since then, it stuck to me because somewhere it hit me a little, that story, and could relate a lot in terms of when I was pursuing racing as a career as well. It was delusional to think that a son of a bank manager could get into racing and maybe get to Formula One day, right? Because it's not doable. If I go back and look at the 14-year-old me who wanted to race, and he came to me to ask about, okay, should I do it? I'll say no. It's very delusional to think you can do it. So I got this far because I just you do it because you don't know it cannot be done, right? So you just go ahead and try doing it. So there's a lot of similarities in terms of what Mr. Quixote was trying to do, and a lot of what we do is like, hence the name. Like we are that tenacity to just keep driving towards something that you believe in, needs to be ingrained into the team, and we work like that. So that's the entire idea of doing this.
So what other interests do you have? You did mention when we were talking earlier that you look for people who have a broad spectrum of interests. But
Yeah.
what are your interests, other interests than your, let's say, your company and racing?
A lot of it. Like, I'm curious about everything. So I read about everything. I go broad into fields. I won't go deep into fields. But broadly, I've explored a lot of philosophy, a lot of psychology. I love political sciences a lot. I love art a lot. Uh, don't understand most of it, but beginning to. Literature. I enjoy literature a lot. Uh, just the world, the way we are, science, technology as a whole, businesses. I invest in companies in the public market, so I love studying businesses there as well. I set this goal at the beginning of mid 2019 that I'll study each and every company in the stock market right now, which is about 3,800 companies. So I set this goal. I think I've come to about 1,000 till now. So, but I love doing that as well. So I have a lot of broad interest areas. I think lately psychology has been one of my key areas because that helps me run a company really well. Is nothing but people at the end of the day and how you can get them together and manage them really well.
So we have a question here. How do you suggest the younger generation can be encouraged and inspired to push their choices towards more innovative and interdisciplinary careers?
Okay. I would say just try towards your curiosity. Be curious a lot, read a lot, explore more things, explore as much as you can. Innovation is just, it happens by chance when you're just trying to do something you enjoy doing or exploring your curiosities a lot. And innovation happens by chance. You just, the curiosity is what drives it. So I just would say that be curious, learn as much as you can about the world. Every time something pops up, just ask the question how or why, right? Why is this so? How did it come here? How are we so? Why do we do these things? So there's this concept called first principles thinking, right? Which is that there's a differentiation between a chef and a cook. A chef is someone who understands the core ingredients that go into the food and knows the difference of the food, and hence the chef can make the dish out of variety of ingredients, while a cook will just follow a recipe and say that, okay, let's put it all together. Both of them can make food, but the one which has the core first principles clear will be able to do it much better for a broader set of things, right? And that's what is necessary in a at a young age to understand that what you need to do is just build your first principle thinking, right? And Elon Musk promotes this a lot. He just looks at things from a first principle point of view and says that it's very simple to solve most of the problems in the world if you divide it into some really abstract set of simple ideas. Okay, these are the problems and why are they the problems and how can you solve them? So it's as simple as that. But yeah, just explore your first principles, keep your curiosity, and keep exploring more and more things.
So Prajwal has a question as well. I want to know if you feel any connection in the topics of your interest, that to be philosophy, psychology, science, technology, and art. Particularly, has art helped you in any way?
Okay, so the question is that the person wants to know whether out of all these fields, art has helped me in any way. Is that so?
Please, Prajwal, you can speak up. Unmute yourself.
Yes, it is. But actually, I want to know, do you feel any connection in between the topics that throughout the journey helped you?
Okay. So here's the thing now. When I look at most of art, it's a mixture of a lot of things, right? So let me give you a few examples. Now, you look at musicians. A musician is just someone who's, from a psychological standpoint, very okay to be vulnerable in front of a mass, right? When they write music, and they're expressing their heart and soul into that music or whatever they're writing. Okay, poets do the same thing, writers do the same thing. They are vulnerable to the masses. They're expressing themselves to the masses in a lot of ways. Now, that is expressing themselves through an art form, but there's psychology attached to it, right? And to be able to have the capacity to express yourself in that way, to understand that there's a correlation between what happened throughout your life that led you to this person who's very, very easily, or not easily, has the capacity to do it, right? So the thing I focus on a lot is building mental models out of things. And if you look at art, it is a culmination of your mental models, any form of art. So you are correlating so many things together. Mental models are essentially your building blocks of your brain, how you correlate things here and there. And any sort of art form, when you practice it, it's just a culmination of all your mental models together. Okay. And when you look at a business, it's an art because there's no hard answers to everything. You can how to do business, how to run a business to anyone, because there's so much subjectivity that everything changes at every single point. Okay, so at the end of the day, even business is an art, and it's just a combination of your mental models together. So it's the same as art for anything, and that's how I think of art as a whole. And then studying different sorts of art helps me build my own mental models to be able to apply them to my business.
It gives more of a creative point of view to you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you started all this because you were worried about the safety on the road for regular drivers, right?
Yeah.
And was there an event in your life or in around you that caused this to kind of be triggered?
Not just one, but many. So uh, sadly, there's been more race car drivers who have died on public roads than on the racetrack. And then very long ago, I lost my cousin also in a bike accident, right? So that at that point, I thought that there needs to be something that can be done about this. Something, right? Because you can't have years of people dying before the society as a whole gradually figures out how to do it safer, how to do it better. Because us as a society are nothing but it's all chaos, right? It's just trying to figure out how to do things. Everyone's trying to figure out how to do things. And in that process, we do make mistakes. We do form government systems which are bad, and we live with them. We gradually correct them and all of that. But this is not something that can be let go on just the process of evolving over time. You have to intervene and you have to accelerate the process of road safety, because it's been done in the Western world in a lot of ways. Why can't it be done here in a better manner with the use of technology? Because a lot of things that have been implemented in the Western world do not work here, but a modification of it in a large way will work here. You just have to figure out answers for the country that we have, which is a very complex country as a whole, and look at various ways that you can solve particular issues with that perspective in mind. So that's what I thought of.
Yeah, so I used to also train for traffic safety many years ago and for many years. One of the things I always told people is that, when we were driving bullock carts and horse carriages, you never heard of accidents really, because no horse in his right mind will run into another horse just for the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is that now it's us who are the dummies sitting behind the machine and thinking that we can, be safe pressing the pedal. So I think that thinking what you're saying, that the psychology part of it is a very important part. Probably you should look at what animals think then on safety, because they kept us safer than we have ourselves.
Yeah.
I often ask this question, is the red light or the amber light safer?
Okay.
Yeah, and usually people will say it's the red light, but it's not. I mean, the red light is a definitive. You are likely to, you will have an accident if you cross this point.
Yeah.
The amber is telling you that you could or you could not. So it's more dangerous actually because it's throwing the ball in your court and leaving your judgment. Whereas the red is just definitely telling you that I know for sure if you cross this, you're going to die.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the amber and the yellow marking on the road, whenever you see it, is the warning that you have to be most careful of.
True.
So governments can make the process safer for you by putting the right signage and the markings, etc. Car companies have made cars safer, yeah, as much as they possibly could, and with your added technology in it, probably even more safer. But how will we change this? Because
I
this
think
is the one that is not changing with everything. We still think we're invincible. We go at 200 kilometers an hour on our highway and don't know how to brake. We don't know that if we don't put our safety belt on, the airbag is not going to pop up, right? So there's still so much of this general basic knowledge that is missing in the public.
I think there's this famous race car driver who once said that this is Manuel Fangio. Fangio said that I'm not scared of driving on the racetrack. I'm scared of driving on public roads when some idiot crosses me and thinks he's Fangio.
Yeah.
Because you can't control that car in that particular manner on public roads because there's so many different scenarios that can go wrong. Now, I'm a proponent of autonomous cars. I look forward to that happening because I see two things over there. One is I'll save millions of lives. Okay. Two, it's a very, very difficult challenge to solve. I think there's that. Yeah, so it's a very, very difficult challenge to solve. To give you a perspective of how difficult a challenge it is to solve, rocket scientists are leaving their industries to get into autonomous car industry because they find it to be a bigger challenge to solve. Okay, because they say that when you fly rockets, there's no dog that will run in the way. But when you go on a public road, there'll be a dog which will run on the way. And how do you solve that problem in terms of computer science, in terms of AI? And that's a very complex problem to solve that a lot of people, the brightest of minds in the world, are right now working on it. So that's a technological challenge that attracts me. That's one. The saving of lives that attracts me. But the third biggest thing is what it'll do to the racing industry that attracts me even more. Okay, for the longest of time, I used to think that it'll destroy the racing industry completely. There'll be no race cars left. There'll be no one racing cars. But then I changed my perspective completely one day when I saw horses on the street. So horses were earlier the mode of transportation. It's funny, most people don't know this, but horses were taken out of the mode of transportation because the world thought, and there was a conference meeting, a special emergency conference meeting set up somewhere in US, because the world thought that because of horses, there'll be so much pollution that will destroy the world. Okay. So the dung that was left by the horses on the road, that was considered to be pollution, and you were sending more horses to pick up that dung. Right? So that was the emergency meeting, and then that translated into the IC engines that we now know, which are polluting the world at a very rapid pace, but also speeding up the process of development of the world as a whole, right? Now, autonomous cars, when they come in, it'll do the same thing to race car driving as it did to horse racing as an industry. It'll glorify that. So, motorsport will be a glorified sport at the end of the day of the, I think, the rich and famous thing, like it is right now as well. When the autonomous cars come in, and the roads will be much more safer. You can drive as fast as you want in a race car on a racetrack, and then you can go back home safely, not having to risk your life while you are driving on the street as well. So that's what I look forward to in terms of the road safety situation. Eventually, it'll happen. How to change the psychology of the people right now is to reward them for driving safer rather than punishing them for driving unsafe. Because how much can you control? There's so much chaos on the roads that you can't catch everyone possibly. You can't put infrastructure in place. You can't put people in place because they're not that rich a country yet.
So how do you reward people who drive well?
So in our technology platform, we are coming up with something which lets you accomplish tasks. So drive below this particular speed for the next 100, 200 kilometers, and you'll get a free reward. And these are driven by CSI initiatives. That's one way. Your insurance premium goes down drastically if you drive safer. Your insurance premium goes down drastically. It doesn't go up if you drive in a reckless manner. It'll remain at the top of what it is right now. If you drive safer, it can go down to up to 50% of what it is.
Wow.
Okay,
That's
and it's
a good incentive.
Yeah, and it's already there in the Western market. In the Western markets, your insurance premium is not dependent on which vehicle you have, but it's how you drive your vehicle and how much you drive your vehicle. So that determines your risk. And the underwriting is done like that. In India, it's not there because the business model doesn't allow it. You can't put a 3,000 rupee device into a car for every insurance premium that they buy. When the insurance premium in itself is 15 to 20,000 rupee, and then give them a 50% discount on top of it. So what is the insurance company left with? So the business model were not allowing it, and that's where the penetration of the technology was about 1-2%. For it to bring a mass change, the penetration has to go to 90%. And that's where we come in and we say that we will come up with innovative business model that allows you to have 90% penetration of the technology and then bring a mass change in this. So when sooner or later you'll see connected cars everywhere. And my hope is that it's us who's doing it in a way that we make it safer for the entire country to drive the cars.
So there's one more question from the audience. What do you think about Tesla's self-driving feature? Because there are many videos that it has avoided number of accidents on road in Western world. Will it work in Indian traffic as well?
So there are levels of autonomy, right? Autonomous cars have 5 levels. Level 0 is your driver driving it. Level 1 is some level of autonomy, like it'll brake on its own and all of that. Level 2 is even more where it can drive on its own in the highway with some particular intervention or looking after it. But when you get into level 3, it gets much more complex. So where Tesla is at right now is level 3 of autonomy. They're not fully autonomous. No one in the world has done full autonomy yet. Level 5 is the full autonomous vehicle. Level 4 is in between, where the driver can just go away and the vehicle is not fully autonomous also. So it's the dangerous aspect which no one is playing around with. But level 5 is where everyone wants to reach. And if you ask me, there are a couple of players in the industry who are very close to that. So once they get to level 5, once the AI has been trained enough and the network, the data, there's enough data to train them enough, it won't be that difficult. So it's like a hockey stick graph, right? It accelerates like this. Once the data has reached a particular inflection point, then it just skyrockets from there on. So we already have the electronics and the hardware necessary to do fully self-driving cars. The computer science, the computers are there, the processing power is there. We don't have the trained AI right now. But when it comes, I think it's the best thing that can happen, because even with so the kind of fatality rate that you can have with self-driving vehicles all throughout will be 99% less than what we have right now. So I'm not saying it'll be bulletproof. I don't think it'll be, no one will tell you it'll be bulletproof. There'll still be fatalities, but it'll be 99% less than what we have right now. Because if you look at self-driving cars as a whole, there's a perspective that a self-driving car will be better than 99% of the drivers. There'll be 1% of the drivers who are maybe race car drivers who will be much better than them at driving that particular vehicle. But 99% of the vehicles will be better than drivers, human drivers as a whole. That's my viewpoint on that.
Many years ago, when I was heading the Dutch office here, we talked about in our traffic group about a bus that was developed in Eindhoven city called Phileas. Similarly, like Phileas Fogg going around the world, they had this bus that was self-driving. And for that, somebody's mic is on. Phileas actually was self-driving, but what they had done is that they had embedded magnets into the road, and
Okay.
the bus followed the track accordingly. But yes, it had a lot of. So this was also a student project where
Mm-hmm.
students at the university were, thinking and building this thing, but it actually works. And I just had known about it, etc. But one day while I was having breakfast in Eindhoven and suddenly the Phileas passed by, I was like jumping in my chair and the rest of the restaurant was looking at me, what's wrong with this woman? I said, the Phileas, the Phileas.
Nice. Yeah. I think I'll have the same excitement if I see an autonomous car go by.
Yeah.
Or if I sit in one and I'll be like, oh, it's driving on its own now.
No, I mean, autonomous car is like sitting next to a driver and, still I'm sure that like many of us who drive, we will
Hmm.
automatically start pedaling with our feet, at least if we are not using our hands, but our
Yeah.
feet automatically go for the brake at times. And
Yeah.
like
I,
that.
I'm this I'm this weird guy who doesn't let anyone drive if it's on a road trip. I won't. I'm always on the driver's seat. I can't let other
Same
people
here,
drive.
same here.
Like,
I've just
and
come
it's
back from a long, long drive
yeah.
across the state. And my friend has been very upset with me that I never allowed him. So once when I was online taking class, he took my keys and went off to buy something and said, I drove your car. But as you know, I've shifted from also the race model of the Accent, the Viva, to
Yeah.
a granny car, as I call it, the I-10.
Okay.
But this trip actually allowed me to kind of find the spirit of my car and be kind of merged like I used to with my old car.
Nice.
So I believe that car definitely has its own spirit,
Yep. Yep.
and we kind of become one
I
with it.
name my cars. I talk to them. I
All
do
my
all of that.
cars actually are red, and all of them are number 64.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
you quite love cars. I know.
yeah.
I know from the first interactions also that you quite love cars. Yeah.
So in Ahmedabad, I think most people know that if it's a red car and it's number 64, that's Gaudi.
Nice.
And I think that brings us close to the hour. There's one more question from Tanvi, and that is, what do you enjoy being the most, a sportsman or an entrepreneur? What is the biggest difference for you?
Mm, that's an interesting question. So, uh, I never thought I'll fall in love with entrepreneurship as much as I have right now. But if you ask me, really, it's a sport that I love a lot more for various reasons. In entrepreneurship, there's a lot more out of your control in the sport, right? And if you're good, you'll succeed. If you're not, you won't. Right? In the world of sports, it's and you know that the number of parameters that are out of your control are limited, and you know them all. Whereas in entrepreneurship, there's so much out of your control, right? And it's just working around chaos in a way. So plus the it's an up and down journey. Whereas you know that every single time you get into a race car, there'll be happiness. In entrepreneurship, it's like today it's too happy, tomorrow it's too sad. It's an up and down journey, and it's not constant all throughout. You have to pull yourself back together and be like, okay, you have to get this done every single day. You have to get yourself to pull yourself back into place and get whatever is to be done, right? Whereas in the sport, it wasn't the case. So there, the motivations of doing it were much higher, and the feeling of happiness while doing it was much more. The rewards were much more uh, instant. It would give you instant rewards if you were good. Either you'll win the race or you won't. Here, it's long run. You won't know whether you're doing something right or wrong until it all fails together, right? I could be someone who's just doing everything absolutely wrong, and I wouldn't know until it fails, and it will take years for me to know that. So that's the difference, and hence I enjoy the sport more.
And on a similar thing, the gentleman who invented fertilizer
Mm-hmm.
recently apologized to the world for this big mistake that he made by introducing the world to chemical and artificial fertilizer.
Interesting. Okay.
That he's done the planet a huge harm by having. There's another question here. I want to know how much it is in your control till now, as you say, in your business front. Have you fared well or as you had expected? As it is said that any business takes 1,000 days.
Okay. So it's already been 1,000 days. Already been about 3 years. And I think I failed in 3 businesses before this. It was really fast. There's this agile practice of failing fast to succeed fast. So you're failing really fast in those things, and we came to know, okay, this is not feasible, that is not feasible. For now, if you ask me how much is in my control, since we are not at this rapid pace of development or growth, I think it's still relatively more in control. Once we hit that inflection point, when I see that happen, once we hit that inflection point, it scales fast from there on, then it'll be chaos, right? And I've seen such startups that I deal with in a way or two. We call it product market fit. Once you hit product market fit, then it's as if that most things are not in your control, and you have to live with that uncertainty and then manage it. But there's a saying in that aspect as well. This is Mr. Don Valentine who coined it, of Sequoia Capital. So he started Sequoia, and he coined this term, where he said that when you hit product market fit, the customer, you could do absolutely everything wrong, but the customer will still steal the product out of your hands. That's product market fit. You have recognized the pain point that the customer has, you've solved it, and you could do absolutely everything else wrong as a company, but you'll still grow at a rapid rate. If you do everything right, the possibilities are endless. Okay, if you do everything wrong, still you'll grow. So that's product market fit. That's where the true chaos comes in. We are on the verge of, I believe, figuring that out. And once you do, it does take 1,000 days, as I've now explored. Over the last 3 years, I've been impatient in a lot of things, because that's what my sport taught me. Be impatient in a way to achieve what you want to, because there was no delayed gratification in the sport. It was instant. And that's what it taught you. And then you have to let go of that and understand it takes time. So what I learned throughout the process, it always takes more money than you think it will, and it'll always take more time than you think it will, which is a very common saying. So that's currently, I would say, still like 50% of it is in control.
So we've been talking for an hour. I think that brings us to all our questions, I think, being answered. I'd like to thank the audience for joining in, also for all the nice questions that you guys raised. And of course, a big thank you for Akshay to have agreed. I think we did this over one phone call and one chance meeting at the bank. And this has really been something that I was looking forward to for a long, long time. Because
so thank you for having me.
In February, I think, right? We met in February.
Yeah.
And I was very, very curious about a young man like this. Thank you all very much. We will be back again next month with a new tête-à-tête. Hopefully, one of my colleagues will do it next time, and we will have somebody as interesting and more each month from here on. Thank you so much for being here. And
thank you for having me, Gauri.
All the best.
Thank you, ADI, and all the questions. Yeah.
And do connect with us whenever you have the opportunity. When you're looking for somebody, maybe we can help you from many members that we have across the country.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. See you. Take care.